So today I'm going to be talking about MYP science and also giving some tips for it. So first things first, there are four criterions: criterion A, B, C, and D. Criterion A is about knowing and understanding. Criterion B is about inquiring and designing. Criterion C is about processing and evaluating. And criterion D is reflecting on impacts of science. So firstly, I'm going to talk about criterion A, knowing and understanding. In criterion A, the question is very straightforward. They would ask you a question and you just need to answer it. For example, describe how does photosynthesis work. By the way, this is not a really assessment question, it's just an example to show you how straightforward the questions are. Approximately how many marks the question is worth will determine how much writing you need to do. So if the question is worth 1 mark, don't waste your time in writing too many sentences. You can only write one simple line. But if it's worth 3 marks, you should write at least in detail for around 3 to 4 sentences. I personally find criterion A the hardest out of the others, but many people find to find this one much easier. So it really depends on your strong points, whether you're really good at straight answers or more of a thinking outside type of answer. And the questions they ask you are from whatever you've learned in the past 2 years. Now coming on to criterion B, inquiring and designing. Usually in criterion B, you need to design an investigation on a prompt given to you by the IB. So they'll give you a prompt and you would need to give the IV, independent variable, the DV, the dependent variable, CV1 and CV2, the control variables, hypothesis, or a research question. They either ask one of them or sometimes even both. Equipment needed, investigation, method, and even safety hazards. So the one in bold are the ones that they definitely ask in every assessment. The ones not in bold, they sometimes ask it, sometimes don't. It really depends on the test. But the IV, CV, DVs, and equipment and method is definitely there in criterion B. Keep in mind that the things needed for this question could vary. Sometimes they might ask you for a safety hazard, sometimes they won't. So it's really important that you read everything carefully and include everything, because you can lose loads of marks just for forgetting to add, a hypothesis. Usually this is around 20, 16 marks, depending on how many things they ask you, but I think the most maximum marks it can be is 20. But again, it really depends. Here's a good example for you to practice. It shows you what you all need to include, a method, how is it ethical, and obviously the IVDVCV, which is always there. And you can go ahead and try it out, because I think it'll be really, really helpful as you get an idea of how to answer these type of questions. So now we're going to talk about criterion C, processing and evaluating. In criterion C, there are a few main things they might ask you to do. As usual, they will give you a prompt, and then you will be needing to draw a data table from results that they have given. Make sure you find the average of the data that they have given you, otherwise you're going to lose a lot of marks. Then you will need to create a graph from the results, and make sure you have to label the y-axis, the x-axis, and even give it a title, because you lose marks in that. You have to interpret the graph and give scientific reasoning as to what you interpreted and why it's happening. Then they give you usually like a hypothesis, and you have to discuss the validity of it with scientific reasoning again. So if it's valid, if it's not valid, and why. And then they would provide you with a method, and you would have to be given an improvement for the method. Maybe they didn't say to do it 3 times, maybe they forgot to give a specific measurement, so you have to give an improvement for the method, and usually it's 1 or 2 marks maximum. Here is another example that you can work on. You can use the bullet points I gave in the last slide to find the average, to make a table, to create a graph, to find an improvement, all of that. So now we're coming on to the last criterion, D, which is reflecting on impacts of science. So criterion D is my personal favorite, as you don't really have to study for this, and it's easiest for the rest. Personally for me, the IB would give you either a short video or a paragraph or 2 about a certain topic, and they would expect you to write an essay about this topic with prompts they have given, like about the disadvantages or advantages, the ethical impacts, etc. You can write as much as you want, but don't waste too much time on writing a lot, because always quality over quantity. So don't waste your time writing like 500 or 1,000. Okay, 500 is enough, but not like 1,000 words, because usually criterion D is very time consuming. So try your best to write better and not write more. And this requires a lot of time, as I just said. And usually nowadays, IB gives 2 short criterion D tasks, maybe one that's a bit longer and one that's a bit shorter, and maybe one will be 6 marks and the other one might be 8 marks. But yeah, so sometimes they even give 2 criterion D tasks, so you need to manage your time really well. So now I'm just gonna give some tips about the science because it can be quite confusing at first, but I have some tips that helped me, so hopefully they can help you. First things first, work your way backwards. So what I mean is start from criterion D and work your way up to criterion A. Now let me explain. I think this is the best way to manage your time. Usually criterion D is the last question in the assessment, and people tend to leave this for the last because you start from the first question to the last. But this is not a really good idea because criterion D is time consuming, and when you only have a few minutes left on the clock and you don't have enough time for criterion D, you tend to mess it up. And criterion D is quite easy to score points in. So what I like to do is start from criterion D and work my way back upwards, because criterion A doesn't really require that much time. So when you have started, your mind is fresh. So straight away go down to criterion D and start doing it, then go to criterion C, then B, and then A. When you have the last 15 minutes left, you can get criterion A done quite easily, because if you leave criterion D and you only have 15 minutes, it won't be possible for you to finish it, because you have to read and understand the topic or even watch a video for a whole minute, and that takes a lot of time, and you have to think and write. So I wouldn't recommend doing criterion D for last, but I mean, obviously it's up to you. My next tip is to read questions carefully. Like, I know it's hard to think and be really focused in the test when you're just really stressed out, but try your best to read the question multiple times so you know exactly what it's asking, because this is really important, because the IB mark schemes are very strict. So if you don't include what is given in the mark scheme, then you probably won't get the mark. So you need to make sure that you fully understand what you need to include, because if you don't include what is needed, then you will miss out on points. So make sure you read and understand what the IB wants you to, give to them. The next tip is don't include irrelevant information. Only include what the questions ask. The mark scheme is very specific, so don't waste your time on writing things that are irrelevant, because you won't get the marks. Like, if they're asking you about photosynthesis and you start talking about, I don't know, the stomata of the leaf, which is not even related to what the question's asking you, you're wasting your time because you are not including what the IB wants. So don't waste your time on writing irrelevant things. Just write the things that actually make sense, because if it's irrelevant, you're not going to get the points. And last but not least, don't leave anything blank. Make sure to attempt every single question, because you never know if your answer is right. If you don't know what to write, then you can write irrelevant information because you're not quite sure. But that might not be irrelevant. It could be actually relevant. You never know. So you can even get 1 mark out of 4 for answering something that somewhat meets the mark scheme. So make sure you don't leave anything blank, because even that 1 mark can make a huge difference. It can make you from a 5 to a 6, right? So make sure you don't leave anything blank, because it can be a game changer for what grade you get overall. So that's all for this video. I hope that this is helpful. And yeah, thank you for watching.